So our topic here today is going to be talking about enhanced scattered. Oh man, let's try that again. Enhanced scanner functions and data analysis. We're going to talk about some of the maybe more hidden features that you might not be using that can help you deal with the data coming in on the screen, and some other functionalities with the tool. And then, of course, looking through some of the different types of data we might have coming in to help us diagnose some things, and then also how we can look at that data after the fact, after we've already done a recording or something of that nature. So first off, let's go into some scan data features, some different functions that you may or may not be aware of. And the first one is going to be custom data lists, right? So this can take my list of, could be 3, 4, 500 different PIDs and brings them all down to whatever ones I want to look at, right? And this is doing it manually. So I could pick 3 data PIDs and then I could just record those 3 data PIDs. It also speeds up the refresh rate of the data capture. Now, I don't know, probably 5, 6 years ago, we also added in the function here where you can do multiple PID lists now. So across, ECM data, emissions data, misfire data, if there's multiple lists on a vehicle, it will allow you to just make it from the different lists. So that's very helpful in case you need to, get multiple PIDs from multiple lists. We had a lot of requests for that, so we added that in. And then the manufacturers that cover that, you can see them on the screen here. So we have Acura, BMW, Chrysler, Dodge, Ford, Honda, Jeep, Lexus, Mazda, Mercedes, Nissan, Ram, Scion, Subaru, and Toyota all cover that PIDs across different lists. And when we go live on the tool here in a little bit, I will walk through how we would do that, right? Next is going to be PID triggers. So do you use PID triggers? Did you know that there is such a thing as PID triggers? And they don't just have to be automatic. You can set them in the tool manually as well. So what you'll do is you'll set a minimum and a maximum value on the PID, as we can see right here. This is on, like, say, a Triton. And you can see we got a maximum value there and a minimum value there. If it ever goes outside of it, it is going to stop or it's going to tag it with a red line. And then it's going to record a little bit afterwards, and then it's going to save it automatically for you as well. So once I do set the trigger, you see we have a blue flag there. That means it's being watched. And then once we arm the triggers, we'll go through. And in this case, that's where it triggered right there. We got the red line, and that gives us a red flag and indicates that that has, in fact, triggered for us. And you'll notice it gives you a red line on the one that triggers and then a green line on all the other ones there. So just so you're aware, that is very helpful as well. Now, one other thing that you can do with this doesn't just have to be an max min on, say, just a voltage PID or a temperature PID or anything like that. It could just be an on off, like a switch. Like, I recommend, if you don't know what you're looking for to fail, you don't know what PID you're suspecting to fail. If you suspect a certain PID is going to fail, that's probably the one you trigger on, right? But if you don't know which one's going to fail, then you could do something like, I usually recommend, like the cruise control switch to turn the cruise on and off, the little switch button on the steering wheel, because it's on the steering wheel. So it's right near your hands while you're driving anyways. So you set it to trigger when you turn it on, and then you take the road test and drive around, and maybe that's when it starts, bucking or whatever. Then you can just tap it with the with your finger or thumb or whatever, and then as soon as that PID goes to on, it'll save it, and then you'll know, okay, here's where the car started faltering. And then you can see everything that happened leading up to it, and you can go through all the PIDs that you were recording at the time. Note that if you did do a custom data list, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, it only records the PIDs that are in the custom list. Any PIDs that weren't on the list don't get recorded, just so you know. So if you only pick like 3, 4 PIDs, and one of those 3, 4 PIDs is not the one that failed, then you're not going to catch it, right? So best bet is to capture all the data as I'm driving, and then use that cruise control switch or whatever, some sort of switch that you can use to do that. Next is a unique feature with Snap-on Scan Tools. Is going to be service resets and relearns. So this is going to be available on the series of tools listed here. So the Apollos, Tritons, Zeus, and the Verus Edge. It is available for that. And that is a menu right here. Now, you can get to any of the resets, relearns that you might need to do on the vehicle from going into the individual modules, but sometimes it can be a challenge to find them. And then the other thing is, when I'm going to show you in a little bit, You might have to go into multiple modules in order to do a relearn on a part. So say I got to go into the engine and I got to go into the body to reset this one part when I replace it, right? And that's what we're going to look at. But if you didn't know you needed to do that, the service resets and relearns will bring them to you on that one page and make it a lot easier for you. So if we go into that service resets and relearns, and then for this example, I think we want to go and replace a relearn oxygen sensor. It's on a Tahoe, and they have what's called a resistance compensating oxygen sensor heater circuit. So it increases the pulse width going to that oxygen sensor heater. As it ages and as it gets older, the resistance increases, so the current flow needs to increase right along with it to keep the temperature up. But once you replace one or multiple oxygen sensors on the vehicle, you do need to reset that back to factory. Otherwise, you're going to burn out that new sensor. So under here, we have replace relearn oxygen sensor. And it's going to give you any top repair information with that. Hopefully, in this case, it would be the oxygen sensor, which makes sense. If there's any TSBs related to it, it's also going to give you if there are any bidirectional controls for that particular thing. So if I needed to cycle the heater bank 1 sensor 2, the heater circuit on or off, I could do that from here. But there's my relearn down there. So heated oxygen sensor learn. You click on that. It's going to come in. It's going to say on the next screen, select reset to initiate the reset, and then select exit to complete the procedure. So I'd hit continue. And then it's going to tell you what the values are currently. Then I'd click reset. And it's done. Very simple. But once again, like I said, if you didn't do that or you didn't know you needed to do that, could cause some trouble for you, could cause a comeback. And I think if you have a tool that has that quick menu on there, it is worth at least a glance in there and say, hey, did I do this test? All right, did I do this test on this vehicle? Do I need a reset or a relearn to go with that? All right, now we'll talk about looking at the data, right? So those are a few different functions we can do. We have multiple other things we can talk about, and we're going to talk about a couple other things when we go live on the tool here in a minute. But now let's actually talk at looking at and interpreting data, right? Data analysis. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is I want to talk about oxygen sensors, short-term fuel trim, and long-term fuel trim, and how they all relate to each other, right? So the oxygen sensor values, the voltages, are going to feed into my short-term fuel trim and tell it to either add fuel or remove fuel from the mixture, depending on whether it's rich or lean. And remember, if the vehicle senses lean, it is going to add fuel, so you'll get a rich command. And if the vehicle is reading rich, you will get a lean command subtracting fuel because it's trying to get to that middle ground, right? And then the short-term fuel trim over time feeds into the long-term fuel trim. So if I have a positive number for a very long time, like +8, +9, +10 for a long time, then it'll tell the long-term fuel trim, hey, you got to bump it up a little bit. And then when it bumps it up a little bit, gets into a different cell, and then short-term adapts off of that, whatever the long-term fuel trim is, right? So that's kind of how it works in a nutshell. But I wanted to show you some data that we captured doing a little experiment on this. This is on a Subaru, and the rear oxygen sensor is a zirconia sensor. So higher voltage is rich, lower voltage is lean. And the front sensor is an air-fuel ratio sensor. It is trying to keep it around 1, but if it goes higher, that is lean. If it goes lower, it is rich. And then on a Subaru, for some reason, don't know why, when they label their short-term and long-term fuel trims, short-term, instead of calling it short-term, at least in the OEM side of things, short-term fuel trim is called air fuel correction, and long-term fuel trim is called air fuel learning. I guess it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because it's correcting in the moment, so that's my short-term. And then the learning is long-term. It is learning what the short-term is doing, so I guess logically it kind of makes sense. But why don't we just call it what everybody else in the industry calls it, right? So here's a little experiment that we did. So this is a known good running vehicle and decided to introduce a vacuum leak. So what I did is I took the vacuum brake booster hose and kind of cracked it off the pipe that goes into the intake, right? So I'll pop the clamp off and slowly moved it because I didn't want the car to stall, of course. Right? So I slowly moved it until I had a nice lean condition. So here we are over here, just normal running, right? 0.8 volts on the rear sensor, which is where it should be when the cat's doing what it should. Air fuel ratio sensor, roughly 1. in the front, and that's pretty normal too. We want it, like I said, we want to keep it around that 1, so we know that it is okay. And then the short-term fuel trim here is roughly about 1 or 2, or actually -1 as well. Maybe it goes down to 0 there. I'm not quite sure, but you can see kind of it's staying fairly level. And then the long-term fuel trim also is staying fairly level. Now, you can tell the point where I started cracking that hose off a little bit, right? So there's a very small jump in my short-term fuel trim, and there was a very small jump in the AF sensor in the front, right? Notice how nothing's going on in the back yet because it's such a small leak. We're not going to see it in the back by the time it gets there. Then once we crack it open a little wider, we can see how it kind of goes up a little wider, and then the rear oxygen sensor is sensing that as well. And also the short-term fuel trim then goes off to the races. So it's roughly about here where it really kind of broke off. Still wasn't off all the way because the car would stall if I just removed it the whole way. But you would be able to see it ticks up very rapidly until it finally gets to plus 35%, which I guess is the max on that. You also see that it took the long-term fuel trim a little while to get there. And then it eventually does get all the way up to, looks like about a value of 6. And then the air-fuel ratio sensor gets all the way up to 1.12. And then the rear oxygen sensor gets all the way down to 0. So that's full lean there. That's full lean there. That is help me. I need more fuel. I need more fuel. And as much as it'll give it is 35%. And then this is just kind of watching things and seeing how things progress. And then if you look at the graph data, you can see the point where I put the hose back on. It was right there. So the air fuel ratio sensor goes from full lean to very rich. Now, why did it do that? Well, it went to very rich because we have plus 35% of fuel still going. It hasn't been told to change that yet. So at the plus 35% short term, it is just dumping fuel in there. So yeah, it's going to read rich for a little bit, but pretty quickly you can see it reacts. And by the way, that the long-term fuel trim is still trailing behind because the short-term fuel trim had already corrected down into negative territory over here. And then we can see it was still going in positive territory there. So it took a little while, but not very long. Also, we went to full rich there, and then it kind of leveled off about where it needed to be. And then the AF sensor leveled off. And then slowly over time, that the long-term fuel trim corrected over time, right? So we can see where the max is on the the learning long-term fuel trim, which is actually the most negative part of the short-term fuel trim. So kind of interesting to see. And you can see how that reacts in real time. And that would hold true with most vehicles. If they had a vacuum leak, you'd be able to see it on there. You'd be able to see it in the different values that are going on between the oxygen sensors and the short-term and long-term fuel trim. So kind of cool. Catalyst efficiency. So this was taught to us in Subaru school, but it does work for most vehicles to diagnose a bad cat. It's a fun little trick. So this is just kind of here's how a cat works, right? So the bad stuff comes in, the not so bad stuff goes out, right? So we get the hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, oxides of nitrogen, and oxygen go in, and then a chemical reaction happens along with heat. And then oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, and nitrogen come out the backside. So if I wanted to test a catalytic converter to make sure it's working, here's how we do it. We want to take a look at the rear O2 sensor. We want to take a look at the front air fuel or oxygen sensor, whatever it happens to be. I also wanted to monitor my throttle angle, and I also wanted to monitor my speed. So what you want to do is you want to find a nice straight stretch of road where you can drive at a steady throttle input for a minute or two. It doesn't have to be that long, and you want to be up, 45, 50, 55 miles an hour. You want to be able to get up that fast. So here's where I kind of, turn around the parking lot here, and you can see a lot of throttle angle there, kind of pulling out of the parking lot. There's where I accelerated to get out of the parking lot, and then you can see here's where I kind of hit my steady state cruise right about there. And there's my steady state throttle angle. You want to see those two conditions. So that's how you know that that's kind of where you're at, right? Where you're just in that cruise mode, right? AF sensor should be fairly level. As long as fuel is being managed properly, it should be nice and level. So we're looking at 0.99, 1, somewhere in that neck of the woods, nice and straight. And then during this time, we also want to look at the rear sensor. So if the rear sensor is nice, flat, and level like it is right here, that means the cat's working. It is going through all the oxygen that it needs to. It's reading rich, which by default it should, as long as everything's working as it should, because that means all the oxygen was used up in the process, right? So that is good. That's what it should look like. If it had a bad cat, it'd pretty much be going up and down and kind of going crazy in there because the cat's not really doing anything. So it's just whatever oxygen content happens to be in that exhaust before it would get to the cat. It's going to be the same going after the cat, right? If it's not working. So you'd see all sorts of variances there. You might also see some variances in the front as well. But the key points are steady state throttle, steady state speed, and hopefully on a fairly level road, because when loads change, it could throw it off as well. But as long as I see that rear oxygen sensor nice and level, that's good. Now another thing we can do here during the same test using these same PIDs is I can check my oxygen sensors to make sure they're reacting quickly enough. If I got a lazy oxygen sensor, you can catch it doing this. So what you do is after you're done with your cruise, lift off the throttle. So here I'm at like no throttle. It's minimum 5% driving, but here's where I lift off the throttle all the way. So in that case, we go full lean here because it goes in the fuel cut, right? So full lean, the AF sensor goes first, then the rear sensor goes second, which it should. If you think about distance from the front to the rear, it's going to take that little bit of time for it to recognize what's going on. So full lean there, and you do see there is a little bit of a distance. That means they are working properly. Now, if it was the other way around, where the rear one caught it and the front one didn't catch it till later, then you got a lazy front sensor, right? It's not switching and reacting fast. That's just a nice little test that you can do to check that. And there we go, full lean. Okay, so checked a few different things here so far. Another one, we got a quick little case study. This one's pretty quick. And I just thought this was kind of a neat little application of using data. And you only need 3 data PIDs to diagnose this particular problem. So it's an 03 Silverado with a Duramax, and it is surging at idle. So it won't hold a steady. What do we want to check? What do we think we want to check? Since it's a diesel vehicle, RPM's roughly controlled by the fuel, right? So let's look at the fuel rail pressure. Here's my RPM surging up and down, surging up and down, surging up and down. And then here is the desired fuel rail pressure. So that's what the computer is asking for in millipascals, so 30 millipascals. Nice and level, because this is what I'm asking for. Am I getting it? Absolutely not. So this is your actual fuel rail pressure here. It is varying from 24 to 37 millipascals. Up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And those ups and downs are fairly mirroring the ups and downs on the idle, right? So we can see how they're reacting with each other. So on this vehicle, inspected the fuel rail pressure sensor, right? Or the regulator, sorry, fuel pressure regulator. So there's a little bit of service information. It is serviceable separate from the fuel injection pump. I think it's because they had quite a fair number of failures. The service manual diagnostics lead to replacement of the fuel pressure regulator. Inspect the inner tip of the regulator for corrosion upon its removal. Inner tip of the regulator from an uncontaminated fuel system will be smooth with tan-colored fuel deposits, but will not be blackened with heavy scale iron pitting. And it just gives you a little bit more as to how it, how you inspect it. But went and replaced it. Just 3 bolts. Very simple. And then now you see my idle is fairly steady. And my desired fuel rail pressure is exactly the same, 30 millipascals. Now, don't be fooled by the way this looks. Let's look at the actual numbers. Because of the auto scaling that we do, that's only 1. That's only a difference of 1 millipascal on either side. So I'd say that's okay. You're gonna get small variances here and there, right? So that's okay. But the wild swinging that we had back here, definitely not, right? 24 to 37, so that's a 7 millipascal swing either way. So that's why the idle is off. So that's a fairly quick diagnosis and a fairly quick fix because it's only 3 bolts. So that's like I said, that was a nice quick one. Now let's talk about some best practices out there. So if I want to establish a baseline on a vehicle, I might want to go out and do what we'd call a flight recording, right? So we're going to go out and we're going to record a bunch of data from cold to warm on a vehicle. Now, if we don't necessarily have a smooth running vehicle at the time, we're trying to diagnose something, well, then we could do that too. But the more often you do this, the more you'll kind of get keyed into what normal is on the certain types of vehicles that you work on. So saving data from a cold vehicle can help with best practices for all drivability problems, capturing some of that data, capturing some of the data that you should always be reviewing. For example, flight recording data on an initial road test. What does the engine coolant temperature look like, cold versus hot? Is it going up and down as it should? Or I guess, yeah, up or down. How fast did the vehicle get to operating temperature? Was it within, where it needs to be? Where was the VVT, cold versus hot, my timing advance? What's the CAT efficiency at idle, cruise, and wide open throttle? I already showed you how to check that CAT efficiency, right? And long-term and short-term fuel trims. So if I see the fuel trims at idle and I see double digits, I know I need to look into something. Something's going wrong with that vehicle if I see double digits on my fuel trims for sure. Use a custom data list if you know what you're looking for. We talked about the custom data list earlier, right? So that can speed up data capture. Nowadays, the tool's pretty fast at capturing data, so it's usually the only limits the car. But it'll still should speed it up a bit just by doing that. So if I know I only need to look at those 4 things, then I'm just going to record those 4 things. Remember, because only what's on the screen gets recorded. And then use PID triggers to flag a PID when it goes out of range. We talked about PID triggers earlier, and use a PID trigger on a switch input and use that as a save button, like I said. So the cruise control switch is a really good master save button because most vehicles are going to have a cruise control switch input, defroster input, something like that. Something that I'm not just going to hit in the course of driving. If I absolutely have to, brake light switch is okay, but you're going to hit the brakes while you're driving. Yeah, I would think. I was talking to a guy this weekend, though. We were at Vision, big training event in Kansas City, and what they do is they'll just do 3 quick taps on the brake so you can see the brake light, the brake switch input with that. So you could do that, and then you just wherever you see those 3 quick taps of the brake switch, then I guess that's where the problem was too. But like I said, if you can use a button on the steering wheel, that's going to save you a ton of having to look at the tool. You don't have to look at the tool; you can do it yourself. I don't need a buddy sitting next to you to save it either. So I'm going out trying to find a problem. That's a really good way to do it. And then, of course, once it is saved, it can be viewed on the tool or by using a free software we have called ShopStream Connect. So that is, like I said, free software, works on Windows, and we'll pull it up and allow you to, move where the data is, up and down. It'll also allow you to view up to 16 PID graphs on the screen at once. Or you can look at it as data, or you can look at it as, whatever. You can also do a custom list from there to get rid of any of the fluff that you don't need. So all good things, and that's where you can go in and look and analyze it, right? All right, let's go live on the tool. We're going to talk about a few different things, not just the things I just talked about, but a couple different things. So I want to go into, let's go into our demo Camry. Okay. And let's not talk service resets yet. We'll go into engine and we'll go through the couple data things. So we'll go into data display. I'll just do engine data 1. And you can see I got a lot of PIDs there. All right, a lot of PIDs. But if I go up to custom, this is going to allow me, since it is one of those OEMs that allows you to monitor PIDs across lists. If I want to do the whole list, I can check it off, or I can uncheck it, and then I can open it up and then say I wanted to do like those things. And then if I wanted to come in here, I could do, these and these. And then maybe I wanted to do, I don't know, fuel system status, fuel trim perhaps. VVT, I could do my angle, right? And then I could do, engine speed of all cylinders for misfire test, throttle control system. Right, so I got a few in most of the lists, right? And then I can just go click on list view. And then now we can see I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 different PIDs. And on a real life car would probably be recording a bit faster. And I'll just have that data there. And it's only going to record those PIDs though, like I said. So just remember that if you do that, it is only going to record the PIDs that are there. Now let me take a look here. What we got for variable is that? That's a little variable. We can do that. So next thing I want to do is a PID trigger. So I'm going to set a PID trigger on this. On the Zeus, you hit the little dots and you hit setup, and then you hit the trigger. So a minimum of, say, 750, max is 759. And then we need to make sure we arm them. So that's this button right there. So I'll hit save. All right, there we go. And I'm going to give it a minute to kind of flutter around. All right, so then I'll arm them. There we go. Oh, it hit 750. I got to try that again. We can let it go. That's fine. All right, so it automatically saved it, right? So now I have this red line right there. And that red line is going to duplicate as a dash line on all the other PIDs. Right. So I'm going to have a dash line so I can compare them all to each other. Now that also automatically saved it to the tool for looking at it later. Right. Also, another unique thing that we can do here is notice how all the graphs are closed and my flag is here. Notice how there's also a flag on the timeline. So this is unique to the Zeus Plus, but on the timeline, I got this red flag. If I tap that flag, it's going to bring me over and center it in the graph. And it's also going to open up the offending graphs that were there. I think that's very helpful. I hope you would too. So let's see. That's got a that's custom list and PID triggers. Let's go down here and we can take a look at our PID recording, right? So remember how it automatically saved it when it went outside of the trigger point. So I can double click this. It's saved to the vehicle. And go down to the vehicle record down here. Double click this. And then it's going to open ShopStream Connect. So this ShopStream Connect that is on the Zeus is going to look exactly like the ShopStream Connect that would be installed on a Windows PC that you can download for free from our website. And you can install it there. So there's my my different PIDs that are there. I can go up to 16. Since there aren't 16, we don't really need to do that. We can do 12. If I want to arrange where they are, I think I could do it with this too, right? Yeah. So I can drag and drop if I'd like to. And I can drag those PIDs around. Or I can come over here and then drag and drop them that way as well. I can also do a custom list. I can still edit this list down again. So maybe I didn't want to look at those couple of things. Save and exit. That cuts the list down even more. All right, so we have that. And then here's a complete list over there. All right, so that's a good way to manage that data, to look through that data after my road test. If I want to look through all the different data I have, let's say I wanted to look at like 4 on a screen. I can do that, and then I can just scroll down through them and see, okay, well, there's where the PID triggered right there. And, you know, what did one do? What did the other do? And also notice how it does mark the one that's the offender, which is helpful. So that's custom data list, PID triggers, looking at data. Let's look at a couple other functions that we can do on this tool. So let's do this Volvo here. I was looking at this earlier today, and I thought, wow, that's really good timing because this will work well in class. So we'll go in the scanner. And we were talking about PID data today in a meeting. And go into engine in this case. And I want to look at the data in the engine. And we can see that I have things like the, let's see, what was the specific question? Oh, the specific question was fuel rail high side pressure in PSI. It's reading right? But the service information was looking for it in millipascals. So can we change this? Yes, we absolutely can. So if we have to back out of the data, but on anything in the scanner, once we're in the scanner menu, as long as we're not in data, we can go to the menu here, tools, unit setup, and I can change it. So let's say I wanted to go to like Celsius, and I want to go to millipascals or kilopascals, right? And I can set any of these to metric. So if you're watching from anywhere that uses a metric system, so anywhere outside of the United States pretty much, you could do that. Especially I know like Canada uses the US market tool, so it would be defaulting to imperial units. So you could go, if you're in Canada and you're more used to the metric system, which I'm sure you would be, you can go in there and change it. And you can see now it's degrees Celsius. And if I go down to my pressure, it is now in millipascals. And the values, the decimal values have changed here as well, because it is converting from PSI to millipascals, or just putting the millipascals when it was in PSI, was converting to PSI. Not sure to which way it would have been going, but you can see that. All right. Pretty cool. All right. And then I also want to talk about one more thing, and that is going to be the service resets. Go in here in our Tahoe, and there's a specific service reset that I want to talk about. So on these Tahoes, there is a brake pedal position sensor. You may have heard me tell this story before, but it's still pretty useful. So when I replace the brake pedal position sensor on this vehicle, I need to do a reset on it. So I need to tell the vehicle that, here's where 0 is when the pedal is open or whatever. So to do that, I have to go into the engine system, and it's going to be under functional tests. And I'm pretty sure it's in output controls, right? So once again, you're not 100% sure where it is all the time. Brake pedal position sensor learn. Key on, engine off, transmission and park in neutral, brake pedal in fully released position. Select learn to start the procedure. Continue. And then we'll hit learn. And then it's done. And then I also have to relearn it in the body control module. So I got to scroll down to body control module, functions, output controls, and brake pedal position sensor learn. Notice how that one says brake pedal position, the engine said BPP. Parking brake, start the learn procedure. Go in here, hit learn, done, right? But if you didn't know that, you'd throw a code in one of the modules. Now, how does service resets and relearns help in this case? Well, I can pop into service resets and relearns. I can go down to brakes. I can see, did I replace the brake pedal position sensor? Do I need to relearn it? Yes, I do. So I can go in there. I can hit functional resets. And look at that. There's the one out of the engine. And there's the one out of the body control module. So I just pop in here real quick. Continue. Learn. Exit. There. Continue. Learn. Exit. Done. So I don't have to search for it in multiple modules. I don't have to click multiple times to get through all those different modules to find it. The tool is going to find it, and it's going to bring it to you on that screen. So I think that's pretty helpful when it comes to finding those resets, relearns that we all have to do nowadays on all these different vehicles. So that is advanced scanner functions and data analysis. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about next week. I can bring it up here. Let's do that. There we go. All right, so next week is going to be another all-new class, and that is talking about the other side of the tool. So we talked about the scanner side this week. We're going to talk about the scope side next week. So test, don't guess, guided component testing. And guided component testing is one of those nice little features that are in there that, man, once you find out about it, if you want to test stuff using a scope or a meter or whatever, that is going to be a lifesaver in learning how to do that, because it is going to give you so much information in order to test these components. It sets it up for you, makes it super duper easy. So we're going to walk through a bunch of different scenarios, and we're going to walk through a couple functions on how to use it. And since software starts coming out next week, starts downloading next week, I'm going to do it on the new software, and there is a ton of new stuff in the new software. So you'll get to see a quick glimpse at what's coming up in the spring software as well. So join me next week. Same time and same place, 6 and 9 Eastern. As always, if you want to join on Zoom, snapon.com/OT. Sign up over there. Otherwise, you can go to our YouTube channel. 6 p.m. it goes live to YouTube, youtube.com/Snap-on Diagnostics. If you are watching on YouTube, please make sure you're subscribed. And please make sure you like the video. It really helps. Definitely helps me out because I'm being judged on my metrics. So make sure we do that. And if you're not subscribed, you can scan that QR code, and that will bring you to the page and subscribe you. So all good things. And then the 9 p.m. Eastern class goes live to our Facebook page. So it's Facebook. Facebook is Snap-on Diagnostics Product and Training is what that is called over there. We had a lot of good reactions and interactions over the weekend because we were posting stuff from Vision. So that was always nice to see. But at 9 p.m. Eastern, I am over there recording live. So all good stuff. If you want to see any of the other episodes in this series, there's 133 as of right now. This is a episode 133. So anywhere from intro to ADAS through EV software functions and everything in between. check them out. They're all about half hour, 40 minutes long, kind of depending on the content, the amount of stuff we have to talk about. Sometimes they're in 2 parts, like evap. So check them out if you want to see any of that stuff. Go to our YouTube channel. There is a playlist for live training. Do we have your email address? If we don't have your email address, you may be missing out, or you are missing out on good quality diagnostic stuff like technical focus articles, SureTrack blogs, quick tips, new product releases. They send out my schedule every once in a while, right? So you will see that periodically. It's not like maybe once or twice a week at most. Just if there's something going on, we're not going to spam you every day, right? So if you scan that QR code, it'll bring you to a little sheet that you can sign up, and we'll get you. All right, time for questions. If you do have questions, you're on Zoom, make sure you find that Q&A button, type in your question. I'll get to them momentarily. And on YouTube, make sure that you use the live chat function. I will get to those momentarily as well. Looks like we'll do Zoom first. We got 2 so far. David says we'd be talking about the ProLink Plus for medium and heavy duty. No, I do not do those classes. That is Tom Kramer, and those are on the 3rd Thursday of the month. So that will be, it's the same place to sign up. So snapon.com/OT. He has started a series on the ProLink Plus for medium and heavy duty. So that is going to be, I think it's next Thursday, I want to say. I don't know. Let's pull up the website, right? Just pull up the website. Let's see. Let's pull it down here. So if I go to snapon.com/OT and I pull this up, that is going to be the 19th. Yeah, next Thursday. So 7 p.m. Central Time. On Zoom only on that one. So just so you know, it is Zoom only on that class. But you're asking a question on Zoom anyways. So good to know. All right. And Jay McCall says, thanks for the class. Thank you, Jay, for joining as always. Let's go over to the YouTubes and see what we got. David Wesley says, good morning. You must be over in Australia, I'm guessing, or somewhere in that part of the world because it's morning over there. Hussein says, thank you. Thank you for watching as always, sir. Good class. Thanks for the download, he says. Let's see. RRMech11 says hello. JLE Lobo says hello. Welcome, as always. David Wesley says, darn good class. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Hope you got something out of it. And Nick Rinaldi says, nice job. Will there ever be actual diagnostics on real vehicles? Yes, there will be. Starting next week, we will be interspersing video clips into this. So I can't, from where I am, I'm in a studio in a basement. So I can't physically hook up the cars and do this at the same time. But I'm going to be recording things pertinent to whatever that topic at hand is that week. And I will be splicing in those videos with me actually hooking up to the car and connecting to broken cars and all sorts of good stuff like that. So yes, that is coming starting next week. So next week will be more of a here's how to hook up the accessories type thing, because we're going to be talking about guided component tests. But like I said, as long as it's pertinent to the topic, we will be shooting some videos to go along with it. That is our new initiative for this year. So yeah, thanks for asking. You will be seeing that in the coming weeks. So thanks for that question. Appreciate that. Looks like that cleared the board. So with that, thank you. Thank you very much for spending a little bit of time with me. Hopefully you learned a little bit about the ins and outs of advanced scanner functions. And I got another question on the Zoom. So where are my pre-recorded videos? They all live on YouTube. So if we go to youtube.com/snap-on-diagnostics, it's all there. So there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, not just me talking. There's a bunch of other stuff up there too. So definitely go check those out because they're free. Appreciate it. All right. As I said, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming. And we'll see you next week, hopefully, for guided component tests. So enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Have a nice night and take care.